And just a short while ago, headlines today's deputy editor Smita Sharma has spoken to the French ambassador here, Francois Richier, after that terror strike. Just listen in to what the French ambassador has had to say.
Well, indeed, France is under attack. The media, which are representing freedom, are under attack in France. It is the freedom of expression which is at stake, and we are very grateful that we've received already so many messages which are highlighting the solidarity between democracies on such a matter. Well, Charlie Hebdo is, of course, a satirical magazine, and it was under threat for several years because they are a satirical magazine criticizing or mocking a large range of activities and groupings. So they knew they were under threat. They were under police vigilance. Apparently this was not sufficient, and unfortunately this happened today. But we are going to track these terrorists, we are going to find them, and we are going to sentence them.
Okay, the big question that I want to raise, and I want to raise this in a responsible way today, because given the nature of the subject, is satire against the Prophet an invitation to Islamic terror? That's the question that I want to raise. Joining me now, a very special guest, Chris Otton. He's the South Asia Bureau Chief here of AFP, so has a real sense of what happens in his home country. Appreciate your joining us here. K.C. Singh, former diplomat, is joining me also. Zafaryab Jilani, Executive Committee Member, All India Muslim Personal Law Board, is joining me from Lucknow. Amir Raza Hussain, theatre personality and someone who's done several plays, joins me. Javed Anand, General Secretary, Muslims for Secular Democracy, is with us. And Sebastian Farsi, the correspondent of Radio France International, is with us. I appreciate all of you joining us. First of all, Chris, since you can give us a sense, are you surprised with what happened here? Because there's been a firebomb attack that gutted the headquarters of Charlie Hebdo in November 2011 after it put an image of the Prophet Muhammad on its cover. And now you have this terrible, terrible, gruesome incident that's taken place. Are you surprised, given the fact that Charlie Hebdo has a reputation of satirizing religious figures, including the Prophet?
Well, in a word, no. I don't think it's a surprise that Charlie Hebdo would be a target. And also the French government, French authorities for some time have been warning of the danger of some kind of spectacular attack. It's a surprise in many ways that France hasn't experienced an attack of this scale for quite so long. If you look in other parts of Europe, London and Madrid with the train bombings, they've seen attacks by Islamist extremists on a large scale before, and France has not experienced that so far.
And the question, of course, is France is unique in many ways, Sebastian Farsi, because this is the land, as they say, of freedom of expression, of the great Voltaire, who said that even if I disagree with you, I will defend to my death your right to say it. So do you believe in that sense, Sebastian, that is what is surprising people, that France's freedom of expression is under assault? Or is it a case where the magazine perhaps knew exactly that they were flirting with danger?
They knew. I mean, it's not about flirting with danger, but it is indeed, as you say, a real freedom of expression magazine that we're talking about. This is the most controversial, maybe, magazine that even in France is controversial. It's been for the last 30 years really, showing those satirical images. And we're not talking about a magazine that is targeting especially religion. This is just one small example of what they were doing all this time. They were targeting politicians in France. They were, and vividly, and even Catholic church has been targeted. So we're not talking about a magazine that's been targeting only Islam or only Muslims. So I must really say that, because this is just one issue, and they know they have been polemic. They know that they have been targeted since 2011. They've been living, all the editors and journalists been living under police protection because of that, 24/7. But they didn't want to bend down. They didn't want to accept and shut down or even be more quiet. And then they republished even those satire, those caricatures.
That's the interesting point.
The extremists.
That's the interesting point, that you're saying that despite what they were publishing, they were insisting the government did not intervene and ask the magazine to shut down. If anything, they gave police cover. Now, Amir Raza Hussain, in India, exactly the opposite would happen. If, for example, you were to do a play on the Prophet, or if there was to be a cartoon on the Prophet in this country, you would perhaps have the state come after you. Instead, here the state was giving police protection. In our country, M.F. Hussain had to leave the country. Others have had to, who have depicted any religious figure in India, have been targeted. So do you believe in that sense that the state in France is different from the state in India? In India, we would never even protect freedom of expression.
Yes, absolutely. You see, I think in India, after a lot of debate, there has been a limit to the freedom of expression. So I think we self-regulate ourselves, that our freedom of expression does not become the freedom to insult, does not become the freedom to become aggressive, does not become the freedom to actually go ahead and insult members of a different religion. You know, we have in this country we have such a diverse
are you saying in your
population.
View, are you saying in your view the magazine did not have the right to insult the Prophet in any manner, or satirize the Prophet, or do you believe France is different from India?
No, please, France is different from India. When I had decided to do a play on the Ramayana, the legend of Ram, which I in fact wrote and produced 2 years after the demolition of the Babri Masjid, everybody told me that I was stupid to do such a thing, but I took precautions. I did it, and I took my script to Mr. Advani, I got his approval, and then I went ahead with it, because I felt that my freedom of expression as a creative artist did not give me the freedom to go ahead and insult. I did not want to, I wanted to do a piece of great theatre.
You make a good point. You make a good point. The freedom of expression does not allow anyone the freedom to insult, is what you are saying effectively at the moment.
At least in our country.
You want to respond to that?
At least in my country.
At least in your country. Is France very different in that response, that the freedom of expression allows you the freedom to insult?
I think the principle of freedom of expression is very easy to defend when it doesn't cause anyone an offence. It becomes much more of a challenge to defend it, but therefore more important to defend it when people take offence to what you write, or often in the case of Charlie Hebdo, what you draw in terms of cartoons.
You know, that's the right to offend. Javed Anand, before I come to KC Singh and the diplomat, I want to get you and Zafaryab Jilani on this point, which is my central question. Satire against the Prophet, is it an invitation to terror? Do you believe that in Javed Anand...
no, absolutely not.
No, hold on. Javed Anand, is the right to satire effectively leaving you open to this kind of terrible terror, or is there something peculiar about Islam? In this country, the movie satirizes religious godmen. There have been protests against the film, but no one's been killed on the streets of this country, Javed Anand.
Well, Ranjit, to begin with, I'm sorry the sound was very bad in the beginning, so I probably missed out quite a bit. I've heard your question.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
You can hear me, yeah. I heard what Amir Raza said just now. I've not heard what Zafaryab Jilani said. But I'd like to remind both of them and all of us of what Sir Syed Ahmad Khan said 125 years ago, or thereabouts. And he was talking to, addressing the Indian Muslim community at that time in undivided India. And he had made a very passionate kind of an argument, which was fully supported by Maulana Altaf Hussain Hali, who's written a biography on him. His argument was, if you don't like a book, if it is scurrilous, insulting, whatever it is, ignore it. If it is a serious book, you have no business, and you don't like it, you have no business to either burn it or demand its ban, because in either case you are thereby proving that you have no argument, and that does not serve your purpose at all. So a word must be answered by the word.
But that's not happening. But that's not happening. That is 100 years ago. That's 100 years ago. That doesn't happen anymore. Islam today, unfortunately, there are elements within Islam who use the gun.
So we seem to be traveling back in time, and the question is, if Muslims or Christians or Jews or Hindus or everybody else have a right to feel offended by this book or that painting, whatever it is, but they have in a democracy absolutely no right to silence the offender, which is what has happened in the case of France. Now it is all right for me or you or somebody to say that we should not insult. It's fine. I mean, that's a boundary we draw for ourselves. But the boundary for a nation, for a society, is drawn by the state. And the French state, as you were saying 2 minutes ago, is quite different from the Indian state.
Can I just take that to Zafar-e-Ab Jilani? Can I take that to Zafar-e-Ab Jilani? Zafar-e-Ab Jilani, the right to offend. I think there's an agreement in this country. You have to be very cautious, and there are lines to be drawn, particularly when it involves religious figures. And yet I gave the example. When it comes to PK and religious godmen, I didn't see people going on the street and gunning people down. Is there a fear that the moment you satirize the Prophet in any form, then today's Islam, 100 years later, very different to what Javed Anand spoke about Islam 100 years ago, simply will use the gun?
No. First of all, I may clarify. Although I'm not speaking on behalf of the personal law board, because this is not an issue for the personal law board.
Yes.
But as a Muslim, and I can say with full confidence that Islam and Prophet of Islam has never permitted this kind of terrorism.
But yet
Prophet
it is happening.
Life is the only
yet it
life.
Is happening, sir. These terrorists today have claimed they stand for Al-Qaeda.
Why do you treat, why
is it happening then?
They are two Muslims? Because they are not, they have to be punished according to law. If any Muslim does anything, you want to say that is Islam. It is not Islam at all.
They are doing it in the name of religion.
Islam does not permit this kind of killing.
So they did it in the name of religion.
They might have, they are doing so, but they are not alone. Who should be seen for religion. You approach our ulamas, they will tell you that there is something against Islam. Islam is being defamed by them.
You're saying
Islam does
is
not permit this kind of killing.
Okay, that's reassuring. That's reassuring, but you know the problem, KC Singh, is between theory and reality. We saw what happened with the Danish cartoonist, and today we are seeing this terrible incident in France. Clearly, particularly in Western democracies at the moment, where freedom of expression means something very different to what it means in India, that freedom of expression is under threat from extremist groups, particularly Islamic extremist groups.
2-3 points here, Rajdeep. Firstly,
yes,
I have received...
I agree with
just a minute, Zafar-e-Ab ji, let KC Singh speak.
May I just come in?
Yes, go ahead, KC Singh.
2-3 points. Let me say that first, I've been receiving tremendous blowback on this after a tweet in which all I said was that perhaps there should be no satirizing of any prophet of any religion. Because after all, that is a basic Indian tradition to respect all religions. They immediately came back on the social media, the repressed anger, both on the PK issue and the Islamic issue, burst forth like, like a volcano. Now to come to the basic issue, freedom of expression and defamation of religion, I think is more forcefully asserted in Europe than probably even US or in England. And don't forget, that is the same Europe which had the Spanish Inquisition, though many centuries ago, is the same Europe which did not accept Galileo. So there is a socio-religious historical development in each religion. Now today's Christianity may find it all right if religion is defamed or characterized in a particular manner and there are no hackles raised. But Islam is not at the same socio-religious level of development. Nor is India where it was, say it is Indira Gandhi's India, didn't have a problem with M.F. Hussain. But Vajpayee and post-Vajpayee India did. So, therefore there is in each country, we have to understand that the level of tolerance on what is defaming of a person's religion may vary on how that has developed. Now the last point is that Europe has to understand they've been at war with radical Islam since 2001. France has been taking part in it. France has been taking part in the operations against ISIS. Now when you're doing that and you have a Muslims living with you, amongst you, do you want to offend them and turn them against you? Now it is not a question, even during any war, you restrict the right of freedom of speech during any war. So you're fighting a war. These are not normal times.
Can I just take that to Chris Otton? KC Singh is saying these are not normal times. This is a time of war. France is fighting a war against ISIS. The fact is that there is indication of a growing xenophobia within a section of the French population against immigrants who are coming in from outside, many of them from the Maghreb, from Muslim countries. do you believe that in that sense, here was a magazine which perhaps was living blissfully unaware of what was happening around it, or was actually trying to benefit by deliberately, in a sense, challenging Islam?
Well, I don't think it's ever blissfully unaware. I think it's been a provocateur for many years. A lot of these issues that you like to think of as being short-term things, I mean, you know, you can go back 25 years when Salman Rushdie brought out the satanic verses, and you were having book burning, and he had to go, you know, the fatwa is issued against him. Okay, France has is involved in the campaign against ISIS, but this looks like it's going to be a campaign that goes on for many decades.
But is France particularly vulnerable? Because at the one level you've got a growing xenophobia within, on the other hand you've got a large Muslim population, on the other hand you're fighting a war against ISIS. Is France and countries like France's predicament in that sense a little bit greater, plus your tradition of freedom of expression?
France has the biggest Muslim population in Europe. It's got about 5 million, which is a little less than 10% of the population. Interestingly, France, although it was very much against, the French government at the time was against the invasion of Iraq, it was been one of the most enthusiastic backers of going after Assad in Syria. Also, it was at the vanguard of the campaign against Gaddafi in Libya. And we've also, even in Mali, where the Islamists took over Timbuktu for a while, the French army was involved in that.
You know, but I'm just trying to understand this. And you know, Zafar-e-Ab Jilani, before you leave us, I want you to make it very clear. In this country, if tomorrow a cartoonist was to draw a cartoon on the Prophet, what would happen to him? I want a clear, straight answer. Would the All India Muslim Personal Law Board, other Islamic organizations immediately order a ban on that newspaper or a ban on the periodical which drew a cartoon on the Prophet? Are you very clear about that? Zafar-e-Ab Jilani. I don't think Zafar-e-Ab Jilani can hear us, but Amir Raza Hussain, are we clear in this country? If tomorrow a cartoon was drawn against an Indian periodical, or if you did a play tomorrow which satirized either Ram or even Rahim, how would people look at it? Or would there be a different approach if you did one on Ram and one on Rahim?
Okay, you know, first thing, I want to put part of this debate in perspective. When you talk of the Muslim community, you think you are talking of a monolith which behaves in the same way, which reacts in the same way. When we talk of Muslim terrorism, we are actually talking of Wahhabi terrorism. Let's get that clear. Now, 85% Muslims, nearly 90% of Muslims, do not believe in any kind of terror. Do not believe that any kind of action should lead to someone going ahead and shooting people. Most Muslims, the Shias, the Sunni, but there are 73 sects in the Muslims.
Sir, I am asking you a straight question, sir. Please answer my question. Please answer my question. If you did a play in this country which depicted the Prophet as people saw it in a manner that they did not approve, would you be allowed to do the play in this country, yes or no?
I'll tell you one thing, I would not do a play in this country that depicted either Ram or Rahim in a light which was anything but reverent.
Okay.
So, and I have already done that. I have done plays which have talked of both religions, and I have done them both with a lot of reverence and with a lot of truth and a lot of historicity wherever I could find it. Now, what I want to bring to you, Rajdeep, you must understand that this Wahhabi terror, don't call it Islamist terror, this Wahhabi terror has been and still is the greatest Muslim ally of both European countries and of the US. The US's greatest Muslim allies are Saudi Arabia, are Qatar,
can I come back?
Turkey, and these are the people who are financing these asses who are on the streets, shooting people in France or all over the world.
Just hold that point. Just hold that point, Amir Raza Hussain. Zafar-e-Ab Jilani, you're back with us. I want, Javed Anand, you want to respond to that? in this country, do you believe that there is a greater tolerance level or lesser tolerance level? You've got KC Singh saying tolerance levels across the world are declining. Or do you believe it's particularly higher today against, among Islamic communities, and possibly as a reaction, you're getting it today within majority Hindu community as well, as we've seen in the case of PK. So films, any form of artistic expression.
I'm sorry, I would not buy the argument that Hindu community is becoming intolerant in reaction to Muslim intolerance at all. There's been an enormous amount of intolerance in this country. That is point number one. And point number two is that it's not just the question of terrorism. It's the question of a Taslima Nasreen getting a visa. It's a question of Salman Rushdie being able to attend a festival. It's a question of a Mega Kumar writing a book and the book being put on the bookstore and being pulled out in 3 months unilaterally out of anticipated fear of what some Hindu group or whatever might do. So we are living in a kind of where the state is increasingly being tolerant to intolerance of both kinds, and this is an extremely dangerous kind of situation for any democracy to be in. Having said that, the pointed question that you were asking to Zafar Yab Jilani, and I think Amir Raza also, as to whether some cartoonist, some painter, some artist, some writer book can write something about the Prophet or about Bhagwan Ram or whatever it is, I would merely say that the Muslim First Law Board or the Bajrang Dal or whatever it is have every right in a democracy to protest, to demand a ban on a book or whatever, so long as it remains within the boundaries of democratic protest, acceptable democratic forms of protest. Violence is something to which we should have absolutely zero tolerance.
But
that is not how it is, unfortunately.
But my point is, this is the difference, and I think KC Singh, you're alluding to that. This is the ideal situation is that if you have a problem with a cartoon, either you draw another cartoon or don't read the magazine. If you have a problem with what is written in a book, don't read the book, don't burn it. And for God's sake, don't resort to violence of the kind that you've done today. But that is not happening in practice. We only say this increasingly in television studios, in editorial comment. But out there, there are enough people, mad, crazed people, completely indoctrinated, who are very clear that the moment you draw a cartoon on the Prophet or you show religion in what is seen as a satirical light, you are in for trouble.
That's correct, Rajdeep, but I think we are going through very difficult times, and this has been happening for more than 2 decades. The rise of radical Islam capturing the narrative in mainstream Islam, Wahhabism contributing to it. Now, in this radicalized situation, you want to isolate the radical elements. You don't want to alienate the entire community. Therefore, this is not a time to be testing freedom of expression, etc. Those are ideal conditions. We should move towards them, try getting to them, and be like Europe. But don't forget, Europe's religious wars ended in 1648. It took them 30 years of killing each other to even accept that Protestantism and Roman Catholicism could exist together. So they can lecture us all on freedom of expression, but we in India know what it is like for different religions to exist together, and therefore there has to be self-restraint, there has to be respect for the other guy, and you can't bring out some Western right of freedom of expression and start irritating other people and start creating tension.
So you believe there is no space?
The courts, the governments
you believe
have been
there is no
sensible
space
in this.
Whereas
in Europe, this has, even President Chirac, incidentally, at one particular point, the French president also called it irresponsible. But somehow France seems to lay a lot of store by it. Britain and US have been a little more reserved in approaching it. They realize the complications of this. So we are going through a difficult phase in the growth of Islam, where the leadership has been captured by radical elements. Let's isolate them. Let's take care of the problem.